So yesterday we ended with a talk. Today we're going to start with one, and for this I'm going to switch to English. Once again, during the talk, our guests will talk about TV, web, and social media differences between France and Germany. What the F means, Dreistufenmodell is the name of the talk, and we would now like to welcome our guests.
Big applause for Matthias Nosches from Alpha Panda.
From Arte, put your hands together for Kai Meseberg.
And of course, the presenter. Please welcome on stage Professor Peter Gottschalk.
Thank you, Marco and Anna. I apologize. Thank you, Anna and Marco. Good morning, everybody. Hume Paive. Let's finish. Bonjour à tout le monde. We are international today. And good morning, magnificence, Your Honor. The 15th of November 1926. That means exactly 90 years ago. The NBC radio network opens with 24 stations. The national broadcasting company NBC is an American commercial broadcast network, radio and television. It's the flagship property of NBC Universal. Its headquarters is based number 30 Rockefeller Plaza, Manhattan, New York, in the Rockefeller Tower. I suppose some of you know it. NBC is the oldest major broadcast network in the United States, earning money since 90 years by radio, by television, by very early color television, and internet apps and activities. When I told to my NBC colleagues that the biggest stations in Germany, ARD and ZDF, are not allowed to do what they want to do in the internet, and that there would be a law prescribing a sort of test for all the apps and internet activities called Dreistufentest, these colleagues asked me, what the fuck is this fucking Dreistufentest? I apologize for this sort of gossip language, what is really politically very incorrect. So I apologize, and I promise it will not happen again. My dear colleague Kai Meseberg, commissioning editor at Arte in Strasbourg, and by the way, he is a teacher of this university. He is the creator of Arte Future, Arte Futur, comme on dit. He will explain to you in some words why there are these restrictions in Germany for public channels, and why Arte, although broadcasting not only in France but to Germany, and although 50% of Arte are owned by the German public stations, why Arte is in a very privileged situation, because being based in Strasbourg in France. And Kai will show you what's possible as internet activities. And he will show his, we call it in French, his dada, his favorite toy. That's Polar Sea and 360 degrees view. So for all those who like to use their mobile phones during lectures of professors, here you have to do it. He will invite you to use your mobile phones during his lecture, during his keynote speech. So, voila, Kai, your show and your audience.
Yeah, Peter, thank you for the warm welcome. Actually, he's in charge for a lot of historic programs at Arte. And so I thought, well, I will start my keynote, my presentations with some historic remarks. Because actually the Dreistufentest is something which has today kind of historic value. It is something that was invented based on models existing at the BBC, for instance, but something that was invented now almost 10 years ago, well, more 8 years ago. And the interesting thing is, when it was invented, the media landscape was something completely different than what we see today, with emerging web applications, emerging social media. I mean, everybody of you who followed just a tiny bit the election campaign in the States saw that social media has today a much higher impact than it had 8 years ago. Everybody who uses in your daily life, I guess, a smartphone. The Dreistufentest was something invented when the iPhone was invented, okay, but still it was not on that high use in society, a tool that almost everybody has in its pocket. So the Dreistufentest is something, particularité, speciality in Germany for the public broadcasters, and this is something where still a lot of discussion is going around. What does it mean actually, Dreistufentest? It means that there are 3 tests to do for every kind of program a public broadcaster wants to publish on a digital vector of publication, let's say. It could be a website, mobile application, etc., etc. The test should do something first to check the content. Is this content really necessary? That's a good question for all contents. Second one is how does that content fit into a competition with also private actors in media, which is also an important question, and especially something which is more or less the basis of that Dreistufentest, because it was actually invented to find a way to how to deal with digital content between private actors in the market and the public broadcasters. And the third one, and that's the main question, how to finance and how much will it cost? Like I said, these 3 questions and 3 steps to publish a program is something which later then became known as the Dreistufentest. And what I experienced in my work, and also when I exchanged some thoughts about our work with lots of other colleagues, is really something that this kind of Dreistufentest has its part in media history, and it's really necessary to rethink how to deal on the new media landscape with new forms of publication. I mean, I guess lots of you, or many of you maybe, and I hope, tried the new program from the public broadcasters called Funk or Funk. And this is something which is really interesting to see, because here the publication of content is is web only, so to say. So it's only about digital devices. It's about mobile apps, websites, and accounts on social media, etc., etc. And here you can really see that the kind of strategy to push content into other channels than the classical broadcast is already happening, and is already a kind of reflection about how can we deal with, let's say, future scenarios for publishing of different kind of contents. We at Arte in Strasbourg, we are quite happy people because we can reflect about the Dreistufentest, but we never need to check or let our programs check with the Dreistufentest. That means the doors are open to do things which are were really hard to do in Germany. Why? Because France has a totally different kind of view on new media, on new kind of storytelling, on new ways of strategy to publish content, etc., etc. The French state demands all the media to be innovative and to do a certain number of programs a year to publish content, and that's really something extremely different in the way to deal with innovation and in a way what to play, let's say, with digital devices and the digital opportunities we have to publish compelling and great content. So there's really a number of projects that was already published during the last years. There are web games, there are web documentary games, there are web documentaries only, there are lots of mobile apps, lots of different things, and that made possible that Arte is now seen as a kind of innovative broadcaster, a traditional broadcaster with a strong part of its DNA in innovation and a new kind of technologies. And so one thing we are really proud of, and which happened today, and I think for me, which can show a bit where other broadcasters, or where we can invite other broadcasters to copy us, is to be really close to what we say, and which are the next steps in kind of technological development of devices, and then therefore also for content for that kind of devices. What I'm saying is, since now, but let's say 1.5 years, virtual reality, for instance, and 360-degree video became really an issue and really a topic to talk about a lot. We saw that this kind of first wave of virtual reality in the 90s was not that successful, and now it happened again, and we as a broadcaster, we looked in it as well, because it's extremely interesting to see I mean, first of all, we talk about a new kind of screen, so with a new kind of screen, where program is kind of broadcasted, it's of course something interesting for broadcaster to look into that and to check if this could be interesting to use for a channel. And so there was a second wave of virtual reality, and we jumped onto that train with our award-winning documentary Polar Sea 360, which was published in 2014. And then something really interesting happened, I think, which is unlikely to happen with something like the Dreistufentest, because we saw that this program was a really huge success. We had extremely good press releases and news about it, critics about it. People were saying that's the future of TV, stuff like that. We had a lot of good access to the websites, a lot of good audience, only good feedback on it. So we thought, let's say, okay, if a program is that strong and that powerful and reaches that much people, we really should look deeper into that, and we should really try out if that kind of new technique to tell documentary content in virtual reality can be something interesting also for other programs which Arte offers. So just some months after, the new project Arte 360 was born, And here I am actually now with the beginning of my keynote. The Arte 360, reality only better is the claim. Okay, that's a little trailer for the Arte 360 apps, because now we have several of them. It's a program which is available on iOS and Android for apps, on some VR headsets like Gear VR, and very likely in this week for Daydream also, a new VR headset, and also on web player, social media, etc., etc. You see that reality only better is something, it's a claim, but it's also something we intend to reach, because with this picture you see on the right-hand side, the moon, it was not as nice as the moon we had last night, but you see the moon over there, it's not really well stitched, which means there are some different, the size of the different parts of the moon are not perfectly stitched together, so we're still working on the claim to fulfill that wish we relate to that. What are we talking about actually when we talk about VR, 360 video and all that? We talk about something which is much older than actually new technology. It's something, it's called immersion, and immersion is something which was first discussed when, for instance, the Greek theater was invented. So really, thousands of years ago, the first ideas of immersion happened. What does it mean? It means that it has the question how to bring the audience into your story, how to take them and how to guide them through your story, that they feel like being in the story, which is something you can see with films you like, but also something with books you like, maybe with podcasts you like. It's more about the technique of storytelling, but it's also a wish, on the one hand, of people who like to jump into stories, but also of the creators of stories. And the interesting thing is that more or less, whenever a new medium was invented, immersion was always a topic. Like I said, for the Greek theater, but it also was a topic and a subject for the first novels written when it was invented, and also when film was invented and when TV was invented. Film, you see on the left side the Lumiere brothers, let's say the inventors of the cinema. Sergei Eisenstein, a Russian director who wrote essays about immersion and things like that. Even Disney, even Wim Wenders, you name them, Spielberg, etc. All of them were thinking about how to break the frame you have in classical cinema and classical TV, etc., etc. So how to break that and how to tell more compelling kind of stories, and especially the three guys on the right, Bender, Spielberg, and Herzog. All of them are working on a kind of VR 360 type of content, and wrap their head around like how to tell stories with it. And I think we at Arte, we found one way how that would be possible, but maybe later on. Yeah, I just mentioned, sorry, the apps and how the program we are doing is available. Here, just a little wrap up. So really important for us is with that kind of interactive content that it attracts interest of all ages. So that was another argument to do really a lot more program with that. And yeah, and we try to publish it on as many platforms as possible, so to reach really a good audience with it. For instance, on Facebook, it works really, really well. We have, let's say, almost 4 million views of the videos over there. On the Arte 360 app, we have the most successful launch of mobile app of Arte, which is funny because the same happened to the New York Times as well. They started their app, similar app, at the same time. So that's quite a good success. And now we are very often the first broadcaster being available for head-mounted displays, for VR headsets and stuff like that. Let's talk a bit about the editorial guidelines for what we are doing there. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel, which means we do program which is really close to the program Arte is known for, so the classical traditional broadcast program. We don't say it's a new technology, so we need to do new content. No, we really say that this is something which should be a mirror of the program Arte is known for already. So that means we have documentary, we have fiction, newsy, content journalism, performing arts, concerts, all sorts of content that Arte is already known for since almost 25 years now. And also some experimental interactive applications, let's say, with the goal to push the boundaries in terms of innovation for content. There is one main question. Nobody knows how to tell stories in 360 and VR, because when you break the frame, well, you have the frame, let's say here, on this wall, but when you break it and you take, let's say, the whole room as a frame or as the sphere, so to say, where you can tell stories, you can look everywhere. But if you can look everywhere, the question is, how do you tell your audience where to look to get the story? So this is something which really has to be figured out now by creating techniques for this kind of new grammar of storytelling. Really an important question. Because if you cannot tell stories with it, then it's just a gadget and it's just nice to have, but it will never be something compelling, like, let's say, like many other traditional media. That's really interesting. I just mentioned the content for all ages. The lady on the left side, she was 93 years old, and she looked the Polar Sea documentary 3 times in Leipzig at the Doc Film Festival last year. So it was not only my grandmother who liked the program a lot. I mean, that was private influence maybe, but even when we do presentations, it's really amazing to see that the age of the people who are fascinated by the technology and who want to try out is really vast, and it's really, let's say, the whole society, and that's something extremely interesting, especially for interactive content, which was normally known, let's say, for more geeky audience, more nerdy audience and stuff like that. With 360 and VR, we have the chance to reach really a more diverse audience, and that's extremely interesting for a TV channel. These are some projects I just want to mention. I mean, if one of you, I hope some of you tried already, but Notes on Blindness, the project on the left, is really something you need to try it out, especially as a student in media. You need to do this. You really need to do this, because for me it's the first content which was done for VR. So you see a lot of programs in VR apps, which is based on games, maybe some TV, maybe some film influence. But Notes on Blindness is the first project which wouldn't be possible without VR. And it tells the story of a man getting blind. And it tells that in a compelling way that you really understand what it means to lose sight. And this is extremely interesting to see that the empathy you develop while watching it makes you see blind people on the streets in a much different way. And so I really say it again, you need to watch this when you study media in whatever kind of genre. The other two, it's Bosch VR, the colorful picture. It's experience where you can step into a painting. So I guess some of you know Hieronymus Bosch, who lived 500 years ago, more than 500 years ago. And with this experience, you can really step into one of his paintings, which changes the view on art slightly. The other one is Sense VR. It's a game, also interesting to check out. I was at storytelling already at certain parts of my presentation. This is something we are giving the production companies we work with. It's called Authoring Tool. And it's a tool that helps you telling stories in VR and 360. So there are different kind of effects. You can work with graphics, and one of the strongest effects is forced perspective, so that no matter when I'm here in the sphere and I look everywhere, the key points to understand the stories are always in front of my face, so that I cannot miss that. Is that okay for everybody? So if for instance, I look in this direction right now, but then something happens in the back of me, which is really interesting to understand the story. I mean, maybe there's a joke or something in the presentation and all of you are laughing, but I don't see it. So I need to turn around to understand why you're laughing, the little story. And with forced perspective, we can create that the joke is coming in front of my eyes in the sphere, and that I can laugh as well to get the story. Is that better? I will show you something. That's actually something because at the beginning we said, okay, 360 VR, quite fancy, great stuff, but how do we work with it actually? How do we know that people really use the 360-degree sphere around them to look all around them? And so we said, okay, we need to kind of analyze how people look. And what was done was the heat map tool, which is based on gaze points. You see that there are some red points, some blue points, and these are analyzing or show where the people look in the sphere, which is quite interesting, because the first question we had was answered. Yes, people are looking into every direction and many different directions, and they use 360 to really in the way we tried it out. On the other hand, we saw that people are sometimes missing things. So they look in one direction, let's say there where the red is, and then maybe something on the left is happening on the other side. Let's say here, you see the red button first there, and then it develops going to the left side. And that's something which is done with the authoring tool, that you move the point of interest of the people in the picture, so that they really don't miss something of the story to understand the story. I just repeat something from the beginning. So, yeah. That's let's say the point of interest, the red part, is these guys holding something they want to move up to the stratosphere, to 40 kilometers height, was one of the experience we have. And that's the point of interest, so it's good they're looking in that direction. But then something happens. This gondola is coming to us, and then there are some other guys with a sensor and running with that. And we see that some people moving in the 360 sphere with it to follow really the dynamic in the picture. Okay, oops. That was at the end, a little discourse to the heat map, and actually something quite interesting to start with the Dreistufentest and now to arrive at heat maps to analyze how the content we do is really used. Okay, thank you so much. And if there are questions, we can go on later.
Danke. Sitze ich denn, weil dann sehen wir den.
Wunderbar.
Ein bisschen gucken. Thanks a lot, Kai, for this morning keynote speech. It was really a good meditation about looking and viewing, and thank you, what we are seeing. So now just a small clip. 2 years ago at the Medienforum 2014, so 2 years ago, we presented to you a panel about a new format. The Arte series 14, Diaries of a Great War. Storytelling during 8 hours about the First World War, director Jan Peter, produced by Gunnar Dedio, who is teacher too, who is teaching here at the University of Mittweida TV production. And because of the success and also the prizes we got, we call 14 now the first season. And we are in the middle of the developing and writing of the second season, title 18, Clash of Futures. Directors, once more, Jan Peter, and our French colleague and director Frédéric Goupil. 2 weeks ago, the post-production of the trailer was finished, just 2 weeks ago, and I show you this trailer, let me say now, pressure-free, as a pressure-free clip.
When I was 9 years old, the doctor said I would die from tuberculosis. That was the moment when I decided to become a princess.
Als Kind wollte ich Zuckerbäcker werden. Wenn man so viel Süßes essen wie ein Märchen. Nur habe ich mir bis heute noch nie ein Stück Torte leisten können.
Я уже так давно солдат, что забыла, о чем мечтала. Просто жить дальше, день за днем. Это моя цель.
Offizier sein zu können, meiner Heimat zu dienen. Nie habe ich mehr gewollt.
Je veux connaître plus ça. Aimer plus qu'un seul homme. The whole world shall know my
Mehr als ein paar tausend Juden und Kommunisten müssen wir gar nicht
pipi-Curry.
И ваше прошлое. И ваше будущее.
So, Clash of Futures coming during Easter time 2018 on, you saw, nearly all stations here in Europe, but even in Arab countries and outside and the United States. When I prepared this panel together with this great equipe, this great team around Lisa and Florian and Natalie and Anna and Marco, I apologize that I can't mention all behind the camera and all these people and the directors and all these people. When we prepared it, we talked long time about the composition of the panel. And I did not want that it's just male. And we had been glad when the lovely Juana Soleca, head of Alpha Panda Warsaw, promised us to come. And I'm sure she would have been like a wonderful flower between us. But unfortunately, she and her whole family became sick yesterday, so she could not take the plane from Warsaw to come here to Mittweida. And Juana tells you her warmest greetings. And we send her our warmest greetings back and wish her to be healthy again soon as possible. Juana is very experienced in promoting. She handled, by the way, 2 Academy Award campaigns for Oscar nominees, that means Oscar shortlisted movies. The founder of Alpha Panda is Matthias Noschis. Bienvenue, Matthias. Matthias grew up in the French part of Switzerland, so his mother language is French. He has a Master of Economics and Management. And Matthias has a background in public relations, advertising, social media, film marketing, and branding for blockbusters. He founded Alpha Panda 5 years ago in 2011. Alpha Panda helps independent channels and producers and distributors to identify the right targets for their movie, their production, their series. So Alpha Panda developed during the last weeks a social media strategy to identify the right targets in Germany, France, and whole Europe for the series 18 Clash of Futures, our second season, and we saw the trailer. Next Thursday in Berlin, Alpha Panda will present this still confidential paper. And I'm sure the responsible folks there will be glad about the project and accept it. As this is still confidential, just developed, very fresh, very new, Matthias will now explain to you how this functions to target, to identify the right targets, to develop a social media strategy. Social media case study, the future of forever. Matthias, your audience, votre public.
Thanks. Well, what an introduction. Thanks, Peter. So, yes, so I'm here basically to just present to you a very practical case study, hopefully showing to you how we normally work when we actually work, when we put together a social media strategy for a film or for a TV series. So, yeah, Basically, Peter already told you everything about Alpha Panda, so I'll be very quick. As he said, we're a film marketing agency, so we specialize in film. We also recently started working with TV series. We really only do marketing, and in particular, social media marketing. We're quite happy because we're working on, let's say, both sides of the industry. So that means on one end, we're working with the big majors, with 20th Century Fox and Warner Bros. We're doing their social media in Switzerland, where I come from. And on the other hand, we also work with quite a few independent European producers. And we quite enjoy being able to work on these both sides because we kind of often learn from the bigger projects and then we can apply that on the films we actually love. And then we also work on the European Film Awards. We're the ones managing the social media. So I hope all of you know the European Film Awards because that's what we're trying to do. And a few films we worked on recently. We've worked on The Last Family, that was at the Locarno a couple of months ago. We've worked on Zoot, that was a German co-production that was at the Berlinale. And we're working now on the release of Kater, that will be released in Germany next week. That won the Teddy Award at the Berlinale. And then we also work on documentaries like Porno e Libertà, which is an Italian film, and Irawa di Mon Amour, which is also an Italian film, and then obviously some of the big studio films, just to give you an idea. So basically, before I go into the case study, I just wanted to explain a little bit of theory so you understand what I'm talking about. Always the first step when we think about the strategy, marketing strategy or social media strategy for a project is to identify the right target audience. And the way we work is normally we always identify first the primary target audience. So that means that that is going to be the group that we're going to be addressing mainly when we go on social media. So we have a clear idea of who we're talking to, what should be the tone of voice to use with that person, with that group, and how we're going to kind of approach that group. And then there are secondary target audiences. Those can be a larger group around the primary target audience, or they can be quite different groups. And obviously in the case study, I will show you the different primary target audiences for our different elements, and hopefully that will clarify a little bit. But that's an important concept to understand. And then the other concept that's important to understand is positioning. So once we kind of identify the right target audience for a project, then it's important to understand what in our film or in our TV series are the elements that are the strongest in order to attract the attention of that target audience. Because what's very important to understand whenever you do film marketing or marketing for a TV program or a TV series is that people haven't seen that already. And so, you know, very often you fall in love with a film once you watch the film. But the problem is that our job is to convince people who haven't seen the film before to actually spend 10 euros and 2 hours of their life to go to a cinema or to actually turn on the TV and watch a program. And so it's very important to identify the strengths of a program or the strengths of a film project and to kind of present them in an interesting way to our primary target audience. And that's where we talk about positioning, and in particular the positioning statement is taking all those strengths, combining them into one sentence, and then when we work on the marketing, we know exactly how we're supposed to work on that. So now that I did a little bit of theory, I go into the much more practical element. So I would like to start by showing you a little teaser that was prepared. Just a few words before I show you that. The Future Forever is a Polish project. It's a documentary about transhumanism. It's directed by a director called Anna Brzezinska, who made films before that were shown at several festivals, but she's definitely still at the beginning of her career. It's a... This is a little teaser that was prepared for markets and pitching sessions. It's just edited, you know, she put together different pieces that she found on the internet, so please don't really care about the look and feel of it. The idea is to make a film that looks more cinematic, but this is just going to show you a little bit what the topic is.
Why not do something about aging and death? Make them optional. let people choose whether they want to age or die. For whole-body patients,
we don't call it immortality, we call it superlongevity or radical life extension.
For the first time in history, a mind may be able to continue without a brain.
The long-term aspiration is to develop the technologies necessary to transport a large number of people and cargo to Mars.
There's a great deal of discourse about whether or not AI is going to be our God.
The future is just occurring as we speak.
Where is it all going?
The immortality idea, the selfishness of the immortality idea, is not especially attractive to me.
you can ask yourself, would I rather have died, or is it better to continue with those changes?
I'd like to see a world that valued every person.
That we could exist in multiple environments here in this wonderful biosphere that we have here on Earth, as well as in near Earth orbit.
I think we could probably send the first person in about 12 years.
Will you be that person?
Only if I'm confident that SpaceX will be fine if I die.
Technology is enabling a utopian project that has been purely utopian in the past. Now technology is enabling it to be real.
So, as you can see, this is basically a project about at the same time transhumanism, so that means life extension, all the technology that can be used to kind of extend life or to make it, let's say, to increase it, and also Mars colonization. So it's really, I mean, the title of the project is The Future of Forever, which I think is quite a beautiful title. And so, you can imagine it's really kind of looking at the future. This is still in development, so they're still applying for funding, so we're very early in the process. And this started as a documentary, but then throughout the process, it kind of developed a little bit. So, we started just having a documentary. Now we have a documentary, that's the heart of the project. And then the director also is planning to create a VR experience, so virtual reality, so 360. And that would, instead of a documentary, that would be fiction, where people can actually experience their own death, and then something happening after the death. There will also be a mobile game and an app, so that means that people will be able, through their mobile phones, to actually explore the world of space colonization. And there will be a chatbot, so artificial intelligence. So that means that that's the kind of let's say, program where people can ask questions, and then the chatbot is kind of automatically answering the questions. So, it has already kind of developed into a more kind of cross-media, transmedia project. The first step for us when working on this project was to identify what were the kind of brand values. When we talk about brand, we kind of see The Future Forever not just as a film or not just as but we really kind of start analyzing it from a brand point of view. And we had a long brainstorm with the director and with the other people involved in the project, and we kind of came up with these 3 brand values, so human, innovative, and utopian. And then, we kind of create a little bit of a map like that, and then we identify the different elements within the kind of brand galaxy, and we kind of position them on the map, knowing that, for example, obviously the chatbot is the least human element within the Future of Forever project, and so that's definitely more kind of towards the utopian innovative side, whereas the virtual reality is more towards the human side, the app is more towards the innovative, and that's really kind of helping us to understand a little bit how we're going to position these different elements. The next step is to think about the different target audiences for all these kind of different elements. Basically, this is based on a very interesting study from the European Audiovisual the European Audiovisual in Strasbourg, audiovisual, well, anyway, it's not very important, that kind of analyzed all the observatory, the European Audiovisual Observatory that analyzed all the film audiences in Europe and kind of separated them into different groups that are movie indifference, occasional hit cases, mainstream blockbuster lovers, hyper-connected movie addicts, and rushed independent movie selectives. And all of them have different characteristics that I can't go into details right now in terms of time. And they all kind of divided between people who are more indifferent and people who are more passionate and people who like more mainstream content and people who like more art house content. And so for us, this is always very interesting this is the first step when we work on the positioning and on the target audience of a film to kind of try to position a little bit our project on that map so we understand a little bit where we stand. And because with this project we had quite a lot of different elements, we decided that we really wanted to kind of occupy all the area from art house to mainstream in order to attract different kind of audiences. And that's how we position, obviously, the VR, so the virtual reality element is definitely more art house because that's something that's less accessible for people. So that's the most kind of art house project and also for more passionate people. The app is also definitely more for passionate people, but for people who like more mainstream content. And the other elements, you know, the social media positioning, the chatbot, the movie, they are kind of more in between. And that's already kind of helping us to clarify a little bit like how we're going to be talking about these different elements and how we're going to be communicating them. And obviously, depending on where we put these little circles, that's also helping us to understand what kind of audiences we're addressing in terms of age, in terms of gender, and in terms of level of education. Then once we've done kind of this little mapping, then the next step is to identify for each project what we call a persona. So that means like if there was one person who was your primary target audience for a project, you know, for a TV program, for a film, who would that be? And that is extremely useful because sometimes when you explain to people this project is for women 35 to 50 with a high level of education, that's extremely, that's quite theoretic and it's quite hard to understand. Whereas if I tell you this project is for Linda, who is 42 years old and who reads this magazine every morning and who watches this TV program, everyone understands much better how we can kind of communicate with that person. So that's what we did. So, for the movie, for the documentary film, our persona is Anita. Anita is 47 years old. Her favorite film is 2001: A Space Odyssey. She has an LG mobile phone from 2014, so she's not very cool. And her nerdiness is only 3 out of 10. She only uses a little bit social media. And then for each of those kind of personas, we try to identify a user, what we want as a user experience. So that means after Anita has seen our film, how do we want her to feel? And in our case, we want her to ask yourself, okay, what will I do? How does that impact my life? For the virtual reality element, we have Yuri. He's 35 years old. His favorite film is Moon, so more arty-farty. He's got a Samsung from 2016, so he's not an Apple lover. And he's definitely very nerd. He's got a 9 out of 10 of nerdiness. He owns a VR device, so he can watch his own virtual reality at home. And he also attends VR festivals and events. And what is the expected user experience once he's seen the VR? We want him to experience fear and beauty. So we're going definitely for the poetic element. For the mobile app, there we're definitely going also for the nerdy people. So that's Stevie. Stevie is 22 years old. His favorite film is The Martian. And he's got an iPhone 6 from 2016. So, he's definitely up to date with technology. He's an active gamer. And once he's kind of used the mobile app, we want him to feel challenged and to experience a scientific adventure. So that's what we want to insist on, the scientific element. For the chatbot, so the chatbot is this thing that you're asking questions and that is giving you like kind of philosophical answers. We have Karen, she's 32 years old. Her favorite film is Encounters at the End of the World, which I haven't seen, but that came out of the brainstorm. You know, she's got an iPhone 5 from 2015. She's not that nerdy, but she's got a strong interest in new technologies, and she's interested in philosophy as well. And how we want her to feel, we want her to feel curiosity, knowledge, and mystery. And then, you know, we did the same, we applied the same also for both social networks where we are. So we're on Facebook and we're on Twitter at the moment. So, you know, we decided to use these two social networks to approach slightly different audiences. So Facebook we're using to approach Linda, who is 40 years old. Her favorite film is Searching for Sugar Man, so we're going more for the kind of documentary lovers than necessarily people interested in technology and transhumanism. She's got an iPhone 5 from 2015. She's active on social media, but not like necessarily in a very active way, also in a passive way. And she's also interested in sci-fi. And basically what we want, the reason why we think that she's joining the page on Facebook and she's following us on Facebook is because we want her to feel like an active part of the Future Forever Galaxy. So, you know, we want her to kind of feel part of the family. On Twitter, we've got Jess. Jess is 28 years old. She loves Ex Machina. She's got an iPhone 6. And she's also nerdier than Linda. She's interested in documentaries, in transhumanism. And she's got more than 1,000 followers on Twitter. So she's quite, definitely quite active on Twitter. And why do we want her to follow us on Twitter? To be entertained and curious through learning and discovering. Well, basically all of this, you know, I went into quite a lot of detail to really show you, like in a very practical way, what kind of reasoning we're doing, you know, by creating those personas, because that means that then after we've, you know, we put a lot of thinking into that, because then that means that it can be anyone, you know, within the team who's kind of tweeting. That person knows exactly who they're addressing, what kind of information they should choose, and how to talk to that person. Because, you know, once you know that you're tweeting to Jess, it's easy to know what she will like, what she will be interested in. So, you know, I think it's a very good exercise to do whenever you're kind of thinking about marketing a project, because that kind of makes it definitely more concrete. And then once we've got all these kind of primary target groups, we also have all the secondary target communities. And, you know, here again, that was the result of a brainstorm, and we kind of identify different groups, you know, people who love documentaries, people who are interested in the quantified self. Don't even ask me what that is, because I'm not a super specialist of transhumanism, but apparently it's a very cool thing. People who are kind of transhumanists, people interested in artificial intelligence, but also, you know, people who are interested in sci-fi, students, researchers, and also the smaller ones, so the young entrepreneurs, people interested in smart jewelry, in extreme sports, startups, interventional medicine, synthetic biology. And that's giving us a very kind of broad group of people. And obviously, we have our primary target audiences that we're kind of talking to when we're communicating the different elements of the project. But these are people that we're kind of keeping in mind. And sometimes we can kind of create specific elements specifically for those kind of secondary target audiences. So now that we have the whole kind of, you know, target audience very clearly in mind, then we can create a positioning for each of those. So that means, you know, for the movie, we created a positioning that's, so again, that's the way we're going to communicate each of those elements. This is not the content of it, it's the way we're communicating. For the movie, we have a visually engaging journey into the reality of life enhancement and transhumanism by up-and-coming talent Anna Brzezinska. For the VR, we have the first immersive experience in which one lives and survives their own death, which is quite appealing, I think. The mobile app is the result of a NASA hackathon, which is true. It was developed through a hackathon organized by the NASA. It's an interactive game about the creation of a community on Mars. The chatbot is a new generation of chatbot that offers an entertaining and philosophical view into the future. And then for Facebook and Twitter, we also developed positioning statements. So for Facebook, we have a participative insight into the multifaceted world of the future of forever and its creator, Anna Brzezinska. And for Twitter, we have an exploration of today's life enhancement visions based on the scientific research with a touch of utopia and humor. So again, you see, like by stating such clear positioning statement, that means that every person involved in the communication of this will know exactly how they need to talk about every element. And for example, when we will create a poster for the VR experience, we know that this is what we want to convey as a message when we're creating a poster or when we're creating a trailer. And so then a couple of examples of posts, and I'm almost done. So, you know, these are the kind of posts that we're posting on Facebook. So, you know, we kind of, obviously we have some posts about what we're doing. The project was presented at the Venice Film Festival, so we have a picture of the people on stage, you know, presenting the project. We also have some kind of funny stuff. Would you want to live in a village on the moon? So, you know, also kind of taking a little bit of funny approach. We have also, like, we find a lot of this kind of content about religion and transhumanism, and also content about transhumanism in general. A few tweets. Again, we're going for the more nerdy stuff on Twitter, so, you know, we can also kind of talk about Elon Musk, SpaceX, that kind of thing. Again, we have a little bit of humor with the next financial advisor might be a centaur. And then we also kind of have information on, you know, the new technologies and things like that, that are all obviously all addressing Jess, 28 years old. And so my last slide is about what this has kind of achieved so far. So obviously I focused on the strategy here in my presentation, but obviously if I had had more time, I would have gone also into more details on how that strategy applies. But basically, having such a kind of clear strategy has really helped us to define the roles and missions, because, you know, in a project like this, which is quite complex, you have quite a lot of people who are involved in the project, and having a strategy like this really helps everyone understand, okay, what are we trying to achieve, where are we trying to go, and how are we talking about it? And that has kind of helped for the whole team to kind of understand who is saying what and when. Also, our presence on social media has kind of brought us contact. Cross Video Days, which is kind of a market, has approached the project, and that was presented there. Havas Interactive, they are kind of creative agency. They have also approached the project and asked to kind of become part of it. Microsoft has offered to develop the chatbot, and HBO Poland, the TV channel, have also are kind of getting involved with the project. We have achieved 4,000 Twitter followers, which in 6 months without any advertising spend is already quite good. We're starting to create that community, and 2,600 Facebook fans. And also what's very useful for us is that, you know, having such an early presence on social media with a project like that is not developed yet, we are starting to have a little bit of an active community that is kind of giving us advice, that is, you know, telling us about some things out there that are happening, some information, and that is something very useful for the director when she's developing her project, to kind of get, you know, input from people out there who probably know more than her about certain topics within the field, and obviously we getting some contacts. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope that illustrates a little bit like the way we work and how the way we think when we think about marketing, and that gives you a little bit of an idea of how to put together a marketing strategy and a social media strategy for a project. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Du gehst in die Mitte und ich setze mich hier. So, prends place là, parce qu'il y a la lumière, tu sais. All right. Bon, des questions. Frequently asked questions. You must not, but you are invited to use the English language, but you may ask in German, French, Spanish, no? Yeah, okay. whatever you like, but in the schedule for today it's English. So would you just... Okay, we can't see you because of the camera, but it's...
I'm sorry,
okay.
I'm behind here. Hello.
Please, you are invited.
We have Twitter
questions. Would you be
questions.
so kind and tell us your first name, please?
Well, I'm the presenter. I'm just reading the...
Okay, great,
I'm just going to read the Twitter questions.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two Twitter questions. It's a German one. So, gilt der Dreistufentest nur für TV-Angebote oder auch für online?
Okay.
Der Dreistufentest ist für online. Also basierend auf dem... Oh. Es geht quasi darum, sozusagen Online-Angebote für den Rundfunk damit zu bewerten.
Okay, gute Antwort, also schnelle Antwort. Zweite Frage. Wieso hat man das Jugendangebot Funk nicht schon eher in das Programm genommen? Ist es nicht schon zu spät?
Hast du das verstanden?
Akustisch. Ja, da ich nicht für Funk sprechen kann, kann ich die Frage nicht beantworten. Leider.
Okay, gut, vielen Dank.
Wie war die Frage? Warum Funk noch nicht früher gekommen ist? Warum? Funk. From Florian. Okay. Excuse me, I did not understand the question, but now I understood it. The question was why Funk, F-U-N-K, did not come some months or some time before. Did everybody of you look already to Funk. What is it? Funk.net, I suppose? Funk.net, I suppose? Do you know about what we are talking? Who saw it already? Okay, some signs here. Okay, so Funk is made by Florian Hager. He is the director. He was first working with us for Arte, and now he is dealing this channel. Well, I suppose it's normal in public stations like this. You know, there was a moment where the responsible people of the German public channels had the idea, okay, we must get back the young audience. We are losing the young audience. By the way, the young audience was already gone. Yeah, but the average, you know, of ARD and ZDF is around about 60, 59, 60, 61. So they had this idea, and firstly, there was the idea to do one more channel. That means the screen, one more channel. And then, by the discussions, the people who were responsible understood that the screen is already old-fashioned. The screen is gone. Therefore, it was developed for the internet, just for the internet, and Funk is now there. It was just late, the decision, and it took 1 year to develop it, 1 or 2 years, I suppose, 2 years to develop it, and it's now you can look at since September, September. So look at, it's really good done, well done by our friend Florian Hager and his equipe. What more questions? Frequently asked. Yes, please. Take the microphone, please.
What is the difference between the social media marketing in Germany and France? So what do people prefer in France, for example, or how do they react? What is the difference? I know it's a big question, so just maybe some main differences.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe we just. No, it's okay. Maybe we just break it down to Arte. We see that the engagement rate on social media in France is much higher than in Germany. The engagement and also the number of followers, if you compare, for instance, the accounts of French, French Twitter account compared to the German Twitter account, and also on Facebook. I'm not talking about campaign, but just content, how do people react on content, how do they comment on it, how they share it, etc., etc. That is much more conversational and much more active than in Germany and France. Explanations, I don't know. I think the media landscape in France is a bit different, and Arte has in general also already in the broadcast a much higher audience and market share in France. So that could be one reason, and others also that there's a nice French word called fidélité. So I think French people are maybe a bit more active in interacting and reacting to different kinds of authors, maybe.
Matthias, tu veux ajouter un mot?
Yeah, but yeah, I would also say, in my experience, it's quite funny. We recently did a film launch in Germany, and we always organize competitions, you know, where you can win like tickets or posters and things like that. And actually, 4 out of 5 German winners refused to give us their address over Facebook because they didn't want Facebook to have their address. And so we had a whole complicated thing where we had to exchange an email address and things that have never happened to me with like in any other country. I mean, we work in France, Italy, Switzerland, in the French part of Switzerland. So I would say that there is definitely that element, and also people, you know, I feel like German people feel a little less comfortable, for example, when you do things where people have to send their own selfie and things like that. French people, Italian people have no problem doing that. German people, it's much harder to get participation. So I guess that we kind of saying the same thing. So.
Please.
So.
Just
okay.
talk.
So a question for Mr. Noschis. So you said that you want to reach a much wider, diverse target audience, but when we look at the more mainstream blockbusters that are coming out these days, you get the feeling that all the producers just don't want to reach a wide target audience because there's a lot of critique because of, I don't know, the lack of roles for people of color or women. And when I look at your strategy, I think the goal is more to have a wider target audience. Do you think that it's always so weird to speak into a microphone. Do you think that the very big Hollywood producers might someday also use this more diverse approach that you have in your social media strategy? Because I always get the feeling they just ignore how the people are evolving around them and are just doing their thing.
I think it's very funny how actually it might sound like a paradox, but you know, we get to see, because we're working on Fox and Warner projects, we get to see a lot of their social media strategy, because for each film they always send us a strategy and they have very detailed hashtags and blah 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 and this and that. And when you actually read the part about target audience, it's always extremely wide and it doesn't really make any sense. And it's literally kind of 20 to 70 years old, male and female, everyone, blah blah blah. And so that means, I mean, my point of view, which may sound like a paradox, is that these kind of people are not very good at kind of doing specific targeting because they don't need to, because they've got so much money to launch their films that they can really go with the kind of Panzer strategy, which is just, I'm everywhere, and I, you know, like kind of, So I would say that they don't necessarily do that much targeting. Then to specifically answer your question about diversity and things like that, I think that's probably due to the fact, but I'm really not a specialist of America, so it's hard to tell you, but it's probably also due to the fact that the American society is quite different in terms of, you know, the way they kind of put people into boxes and communities and things like that. So I suppose there's obviously a bias due to the fact that those kind of strategies are created by people who are in LA, who think that if you're kind of addressing black people, then you're only addressing black people. So I suppose there is something there, but I'm not. It's kind of hard, you know, I've never been to LA myself, so it's kind of hard to really completely analyze what's happening in their head. But I suppose it's more due to cultural differences. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
One last would be possible. Teresa showed me already that we have still 5 minutes or 4 minutes now. So one would be possible. One more. If not, I would ask a last question to Matthias. How to measure nerdiness? Explain us. And tell us your nerdiness, please.
Yeah, I mean, interesting question. I've never thought about it in those terms. No, I would say when we talk about nerdiness is kind of how active are people on social media. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who are kind of consuming social media a lot, but in a very passive way. So they're using their Facebook to kind of read a lot of stuff and to kind of get a lot of information and watch photos from their friends, but they're not necessarily in an active way kind of participating and posting and commenting and liking and things like that. And the problem is that when you look at the algorithm of these different social networks, when you are a Facebook page, if you want people to keep getting your material, you need people to kind of participate and interact with your material. So you need them to click on it, you need to comment on it, you need them to like it or to share it. And so that's, I guess, for us, which is not necessarily the universal definition of nerdiness, that's mostly the thing. Like, how likely are these people to actually kind of click on it so that they would keep getting stuff? And that's in particular, for example, if I can give away a little bit of that confidential information about Clash of Futures, that's typically one problem that we will have with a project like Clash of Futures, because that's a project for an older audience. And, you know, I guess a lot of you have parents who have a Facebook profile, but I guess that most of your parents who have a Facebook profile are not necessarily very active and are not clicking on a lot of stuff and commenting. And so, you know, when you have these kind of more passive, non-nerdy audiences, you need to find content that's so engaging that people are going to engage with that content. And that's definitely an extra challenge. So I would say, for us, maybe that's the definition of nerdiness, even though it's not...
What's your nerdiness?
And what's my nerdiness? I would say, in reality, it's probably 6 out of 10, and then because of my job, 8 out of 10, but that's not my kind of natural nerdiness. I'm personally not a big fan of Facebook, and I only almost post professional stuff on Facebook. I don't really enjoy sharing my life on there.
And with my 2 mobiles, the French one, number 4 iPhone, number 6, what's my nerdiness?
I suppose maybe you're 7.
Okay. Well, okay. I will wonder about if it's a compliment or
No, definitely.
We will see. So think about your nerdiness at the media faculty. Thanks a lot for coming so early this morning. There are many people still. In French, there's an expression. If somebody comes late, you know, French people are polite people. They don't say, "Oh my God, you are late," angry. No, they say, "Elle avait ou il avait un accident." In German, we would say, einen Unfall mit dem Kissen. Einen Unfall mit dem Kissen. So I suppose there had been many people who had still accidents tonight in their bed and with their pillow. But they will come during the day, and thanks to all the people here who organized it, thanks to the people behind the camera, and thanks to the people who directed, thanks to the people who moderated, thanks to you who prepared it. I know you did a good job, and I thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Take care, and see you soon.
Take a seat.